First of all, before the video even starts, I won't talk about the original Doom in this video at all. This is not a retrospective on the entire series, but a video critiquing its second reboot and its sequel. I've made a video on the original if that's something you care about, but this isn't that. Second, that was a lie. I will definitely talk about the original at least once. Hi, but you can just simply call me Amazon, and on April 12, 2016, Yuri Milner, Stephen Hawking and Mark Zuckerberg founded Breakthrough Starshot, a research and engineering project to create rockets, almost sailboat-like spaceships and other futuristic tech to ultimately make it to Alpha Centauri. Alpha Centauri is the star system closest to our own sun, over 4 light years away. About 0.0000002% of the way there, on the sandy surface of Mars, about a month later after reveal of the project, another significant thing happened. The Doom Marine awoke from his long slumber. This video will play out as follows. Part 1 is about Doom 2016, introducing you to the mechanics that make it tick, and I'll be going through this game, skipping lots along the way. I will not be going through both games in full. I want to focus more on specific parts, and I don't want to make another 4-hour video about them. I could, we all know that. I mean, I made a 4-hour video about a single Call of Duty game, but this time I won't. Part 2 is about Doom Eternal and its DLC. This is where the comparisons really start. I will go through the game, but not really. I won't speak about the levels barely at all. Then I will throw in a conclusion. Feel free to skip to that part. I'm probably saving the best for last. Released on the 13th of March 2016, Doom, colloquially called Doom 2016, saw lots of praise. It was a new type of shooter, somehow a fraction as important as its namesake and predecessor from 1993, a game that directly kickstarted one of the most important and influential genres in gaming. Doom clones, now called first-person shooters. This is no small feat, being even a percent as important as the original. Doom 2016, henceforth interchangeably called Doom, Doom 16 and Doom 2016, opens with a very telling cutscene.
They are rage, brutal, without mercy. But you will be worse. Rip and tear, until it is done.
Our long slumber is interrupted. The Doom Marine lays naked on a demonic sort of operating table, a slab of stone. The first second of gameplay is killing. We clear a room of demons before even putting our pants on. I've praised this intro before, in my now admittedly dated retrospective covering The Last of Us, and I still stand by that point. If this game instead opened with a training scenario teaching us the controls like a Call of Duty game, or with a set-piece cutscene like Uncharted, we would get the wrong idea. This game is about shooting and getting shot. Don't get it twisted. We get our first weapon here, a pistol. It's boring, but acts as our final backup if we manage to run out of ammo. This is its only use, as its damage make it almost unusable outside of being a side piece. We will only use this gun for a couple of minutes, so I won't even try to talk about it. Once we get another weapon, in a couple of minutes, we never use this again. Our mascot gets into his new costume, the Praetor suit. It looks great, if not a bit generic, but still badass. Halo guy crossed with Boba Fett. It's admittedly kind of try-hard. The Doom franchise, at least the first couple, has always been on the nose and satirical in nature, so this awesome looking feat of graphics does feel sort of out of place in a way. We'll get back to what this suit adds later, but yeah, the new suit looks cool, but in a somewhat generic way. One thing I enjoy immensely is the way the Doom guy, just like most players at this point, seems almost completely disinterested in the quote-unquote story of the game presented by this point. We just woke up on the wrong side of the demonic slab, and listening to some pretentious sounding guy talking about whatever is the last thing we or our protagonist wants to do. And yes, I will almost entirely skip the story too. I'll try to summarize it later, but it won't be pretty. Instead, let's kill something. Shooting and getting shot in Doom was such a refreshing take on first-person shooters at the time of its release that it almost single-handedly revived an entire genre of shooters. Boomer shooters. Instead of hiding behind cover and waiting for our health to slowly recover, we push on. We take a demon to the brink of death, a step away from the not-so-pearly gates of hell, signified by their Minecraft enchantment like blinking, and then we brutalize them in an over-the-top way. This is a so-called glory kill, the only way to recover health on the fly. There are other ways to recover health, medkits and other pickups, but these kills will act as the only way to do it in a fight without switching your brain from kill, kill, kill to search, search, heal. Glory kills are a pretty big point of contention for players. They slow down the game in a way that lots of people find unfun. To me, that's not a problem. They provide a bit of pause, a second for us to refocus on the craziness of the combat. What I don't like is how repetitive they feel. This is the second and to me only problem with them. There are plenty of animations here, based on which angle you activate the glory kill from, but there's still not enough variety. I wish there was a way to skip these sometimes, as they do save on ammo if you use them consistently, but later on, I found myself skipping some of them just to be able to quote-unquote keep playing. That's why I don't find them a problem, you can skip them almost entirely. I find the animations themselves great, kind of funny and almost grotesque at times. Doom Eternal expands on this, so we'll talk about this again there. In Doom, you don't reload weapons, a peculiar detail to lots of people. Instead, we have limited ammo, making accuracy, even in a game as frankly crazy as this one, a vitally important detail. The first real weapon we get is a shotgun, a futuristic-looking pump action that does fair damage. It's going to be one of the guns everybody will use a lot in the beginning, but it drops off pretty hard once we get its bigger and better brother. We first get to use this weapon in the game's first real arena. And yes, that's what I will be calling these from now on. These rooms, arenas, are made for shooting, and it's so easy to tell. Moving through them just feels right. No real corners or awkward bumps slowing us down. They're made for running around in and shooting stuff first and foremost. Probably play-tested almost endlessly too, harkening back to its Doom roots as a game above all, not willing to pause its gameplay for realistic worlds. Don't get me wrong, these arenas are wonderful to look at too, but they make little to no sense once you stop to actually examine them. Maybe not so much right now in the first couple of levels, but once we get off-world, id Software stops holding their level designers back and arenas become a whole level better than these. They remind me of maps from games like Counter-Strike. I'll use Mirage's Middle as an example. What is this place? One side of it looks almost like a dried up dock, a huge ramp that leads to a small alleyway, while the other side has this door that makes no sense and a bench placed perfectly to jump on this weird piece of architecture and further into the window. The map plays like a dream though, which is what matters most in both Doom, Counter-Strike and other games that put gameplay first. Visually, the game looks great. It's realistic but still close to timeless because of the almost hyper-real and staged parts of it. The sequel does this even better, but we'll get there. Lots of people would call this game dated in its visuals compared to something like, say, Alan Wake 2, but I don't agree. Sure, Alan Wake does look better, but 2016 is pretty far from dated, saved in large part by its more stylish sides. Without the spinning power-ups, almost cartoony-inspired demons, and robotic animations, this game would instead feel grungy and ultimately sort of boring. It doesn't feel that way, unlike Doom 3, but it tries to be a bit more grounded than I think it should. This focus on aesthetics was a great choice, and one that the second game only expands upon. The animation is something I love here. The Doom guy looks and feels powerful. Obviously, the suit and the abs or whatever, but the animations of his hands expand on this. The Doom guy moves in a somewhat cartoony way. I mean, they added the sound here for a reason. A fun aesthetic choice, but he also feels super powerful. All the kill animations make it look like it takes little to no force for the guy to absolutely obliterate these demons. The UI varies. I don't really like most of the menus. They're sleek and simple, but nothing special. The UI in movement is the same, kind of boring, but therefore also easy to read, which is a plus. I have to shout out the map though. I love the 3D map here. It really makes it super clear where you can and should go. A well-made map is always pleasant. The music is something I can't really talk about. I'm not very quote good unquote at music. I'm listening to a Jungle D&B playlist as I'm writing this part of the script, so I'm not going to go very deep here. But here we go. It's good. It's really fucking good. That's it. Vistas here look great, but the game feels a bit one note at times. There's a lack of color within the chosen locations, either it's the orange of Mars or the orange of Hell. Don't get me wrong, the game still looks great, and I'm reaching a bit here just to make the comparison better later, but yeah. It can get a bit boring seeing the same colors and types of locations over and over. Exploration within these locations varies in quality. If you're like me, you won't really care for the secrets that don't do anything for your arsenal, especially in the first game. But finding upgrades for your stuff by paying more attention was nice. There's a couple of chill platforming and exploration segments here where we have to find keys and switches to progress in the game, to break up the constant fighting. Needed change of pace. Moving in Doom feels wonderful. It's a treat really. Stepping away from the norm, the routine of slowly walking or awkward sprint toggles, and instead embracing a faster, more fun pace. There's no sprint button here, because you don't need one. Your default speed feels near perfect right from the start, giving you a sense of momentum and freedom that's rare in the games that came out alongside it. And it only gets better as you go. Once you unlock the upgrade to turn more smoothly in the air, the controls feel even tighter and more responsive. And then there's the double jump. Simple, truly nothing special, but incredibly effective, adding verticality and opening up more possibilities for movement. It's fast and super responsive, letting us focus entirely on the shooting without distractions like having to think about trajectories and stuff. It's also a great way to stay in the air longer, or to just change directions even more. A good double jump is always nice, but a dash is something I miss here, something that Doom Eternal adds. What makes this movement system so special is how perfectly it fits with the rest of the game. The speed and flow of movement never overpowered the gunplay, instead they work hand in hand with it. I dart through arenas, dodge enemy attacks, and close gaps super quickly, turning every fight into a fast-paced, high-stakes sort of dance. This movement system doesn't just complement the gameplay and map design. No, it feels like it was built alongside them, enhancing the other to create something truly satisfying. A movement system that I really enjoy, immensely. Doom is definitely playable with a controller, but the keyboard and mouse maximize the precision, speed and control that is pretty much needed if you want to enjoy the game on its own level. The mouse is pretty self-explanatory, it's a better aiming tool than a joystick. But the keyboard is also super important here. Switching quickly between weapons is super important, and binding them separately is something I highly encourage. If you're playing on PC, I also recommend playing on a setting that your PC can more than manage, so that your FPS can reach up to and preferably above your monitor's refresh rate. Before you tell me there's no reason to have more FPS than your screen can show you, shut up, more frames mean faster frame times, which means more responsive gaming. Some games don't need this, but a first-person shooter like this, where speed and precision is so vital, you'll want to get those extra frames. In terms of time to kill, something that I love to bring up because of my thousands of hours of CS and Call of Duty, is pretty long. Most dangerous enemies die slowly, so tracking targets is a priority over flicking. This doesn't matter as much as if you're on a controller that you shouldn't be using anyways. Lower the sensitivity on your mouse and don't worry that much about being able to do 360s with your wrist. Or don't. It's a game in single player too, so who cares actually. Back to Doom. The premise of the story is pretty simple if you want it to be. Mankind has been tapping into the energy from hell, but something goes wrong and we're here to stop it. Someone called Samuel Hayden talks to us through our Praetor suit. He's our ally and guide for now. we gather that the scientist Olivia Pierce is our antagonist, opening the portals to hell and letting the demons through. I won't really delve into the story more than that, I'll comment on small things throughout maybe, but don't expect anything detailed or even an overview of the entire thing. This first mission introduces us to the first couple of enemies in the game. Enemies that later on will act more as fodder for our arsenal, but right now they act as the most generic, simple grunt to shoot. Don't get me wrong here, they are fun to shoot, but as the game evolves, these will fall back and act as filler. Some of them use simple fireball attacks, slowly approaching projectiles to force you to move, but again, they aren't a problem in any way at all. The second level of Doom 2016 adds plenty of stuff. 3 new weapons are included. One of which is the chainsaw, which can be used to get some ammo back or to instantly kill a harder enemy. This is probably the point where, if I were you, would start binding specific keys on my keyboard for specific weapons. Doom plays better this way. The weapon and scroll wheel are for controller players and players who aren't ready to set aside the time to play the game in a more streamlined way. And no, this isn't something the game forces you to do, but I want you to. Back to the weapons. The other 2 weapons added in the second level are a bit less important. The machine gun and the plasma rifle. These are fine weapons, but not essential in the same way some of the later ones are. You will see me using these, don't get me wrong, but again, they don't shine as much as some of the single fire weapons later on. They don't feel very powerful, except for the machine gun that feels amazing to use against fodder enemies and weak points. To be more exact, using the one-shot powershot upgrade, the scope. I really like this one. Zooming in gives you a single fire slug that does a lot of damage, killing most fodder in a single headshot. You can quickscope this one too, no need to be super accurate or anything. This isn't a sniper. Oh yeah, this game has mods for the weapons, I might have missed that. I won't go into depth on all of them, but while we're here, let's take a look at the guns in Doom 2016. I've already talked about some of them, so let's play some more of the game and get some more guns, and more enemies to use them against. First of all, and probably most important of all, the super shotgun. More than a weapon, it's a statement. A pretty simple one. Get close, get dead. It's also kind of an icon. The Doom Marine without a double-barreled shotgun, the only gun in the game that you have to reload just to dumb it down a peg, is not really the Doom Marine. The super shotgun doesn't boast multiple weapon mods like basically all other guns in Doom 2016, but that simplicity speaks volumes. Its straightforward nature eliminates any distractions from its single purpose: rip and tear. That's only one purpose, by the way, they're synonyms. The lack of frills on this weapon sharpens its identity, reinforcing that it's not meant to be versatile, it's meant to be lethal. The sound and impact it has is immensely gratifying, echoing with unmistakable authority. It's a treat. Every enemy has a very specific weakness, but by using this weapon, they're not very specific anymore, if you catch my drift. The chain gun, a very generic minigun, is fine. You won't see me using this one all that much because it's boring and it takes quite a while to ramp up. The Gauss cannon is one of my favorites. It's the token sniper, the instagib weapon. Massive damage in a short amount of time. A perfect weapon to switch to in the middle of your combo. I don't use it that much, I love it for sniping weak points with the zoom upgrade, but other than that I feel like I'm wasting ammo if you don't instantly kill something. It also takes quite a while to shoot this one, if you're not switching weapons of course. The rocket launcher is awesome, a slow moving projectile that does massive damage. There's no slow reload here. Like most weapons in the game, there are no reloads at all, and ammo and preserving it is a whole lot more important. To finish this weapon segment out, there's the BFG, the big fucking gun, to get us out of a bad spot. Killing basically everything in front of us is cool, and a staple in the Doom franchise for a reason. The game works at its best when our arsenal is fully complete. All weapons and equipment working in unison, in perfect harmony. Going back to playing the game in the time leading up to this point makes it feel almost neutered. Decidedly lesser than, in a way that makes you never want to play Doom 2016 without all of your unlocks again. Its entire cast of guns, equipment and upgrades is where it really starts to shine. This is also when we use this arsenal together to make a sort of combo system. You'll see me switching between the super shotgun, the rocket launcher and other weapons in quick succession to cancel out their end lag and fire them repeatedly. This is fucking awesome. It takes a while to get into, the game doesn't really force you to either, outside of a quick pop-up tutorial letting you know it exists, but once you start trying and eventually feel comfortable with it, you won't stop. This merges with the excellent enemy design, all of which are memorable because each one serves a unique purpose in combat, unless you're playing on a lower difficulty. They all contribute to an immensely dynamic experience. Let me explain. The weaker guys offer moments of rest and acts as a quick resource replenishment using glory kills, while more agile enemies like the fast and ranged guys keep the pressure on with their movement and ranged shit. Heavy hitters like the Baron of Hell or the Cyber Demon, and so on, demand our full attention and precise firepower to not get shit on. Specialized foes like the Pinky with its armored front and especially vulnerable rear, or the Summoner which spawns reinforcements, push us to adapt on the fly, or on the double jump maybe. As one big mob, these enemies coagulate into a huge and constantly evolving combat chessboard, a combat puzzle that makes the game feel anything but repetitive, even if we play the same encounter over and over because we suck and die a lot. It feels reactive and super satisfying to fight these guys. The true brilliance of these little rascals lie in how they simultaneously make us feel super vulnerable and powerful. Doom 2016's combat becomes a fluid sort of dance of dodging, shooting and resource management, where success feels both hard-earned and exhilarating. It's unforgettable, and dare I say, truly great. Few games make me feel this way, and it's hard to see how it can get better than this at this point. Finishing out the story, we get the big special lightsaber weapon, go in and out of hell a couple of times, and shut down the portals that are letting in the demons. We kill a big spider and are betrayed and captured by Samuel Hayden. He teleports us away somewhere, end of the game. I told you I'd skip around. The ending is a bit of a cliffhanger, but also a great setup for the second game. Too bad the second game fumbled it pretty hard. But before the second game, you should go check out my Patreon, where you can vote for what I make next. Will it be a 4-hour retrospective review of the Moomins anime, or maybe a 2-hour analysis of Apex Legends? Again? Go check it out. Following is free, so maybe do that. Also, look at my Twitter. I love posting shit on there. Oh, and subscribe? Look at the subscribe button down below right now. Subscribe to my channel. Did you see that? Looks pretty cool, right? Back to the video. On the 19th of March 2020, Doom 2016's sequel, Doom Eternal, was released. Picking up where Doom 2016 left off, Doom Eternal takes the already somewhat frenetic formula of the reboot and turns it into a more complex, layered experience. If 2016 reintroduced players to the fast-paced, in-your-face combat of the original series, Eternal expands on that with new mechanics that demand even more quick thinking within its combat, but also more strategic, thoughtful action. Eternal builds on the foundation of its predecessor with an evolved arsenal, intricate level design, and enhanced movement capabilities, pushing us, the player, to become even more tactical in combat, or to just spam the new dash. Doom Eternal raises the stakes from Doom 2016 with its more intricate combat mechanics, deeper narrative elements that ultimately fall flat, and ambitious approach to keeping the player constantly moving, thinking, and fighting at the edge of our skill. In the first level, we don't get a pistol, we get the shotgun right away instead, which isn't much of a loss. Just like the first game, we're slowly introduced to all the mechanics, finishing out our arsenal about 5 or 6 levels in. The upgrades are back. Some are different, but most stay the same. The pacing isn't as much of an issue in this game compared to 2016 because of this, finding most weapons and movement options earlier. Doom Eternal has a hub world. This feels a bit weird at first, especially if you just want to shoot some demons and stuff, but it doesn't get in the way. It acts as a walkable collection and unlocking area. You can see the vinyl, toys and other stuff you find on your ripping and tearing journey through the game here. A nice little thing. I must admit it's a weird location, but I liked the break it gave me. I also really liked seeing the stuff I had unlocked, and there's plenty of funny stuff to find there. It's an okay addition that feels super high quality. Something the original, 2016, does very well is its looks. The game looks great, to today's and future standards. Doom Eternal on a base level looks better. But things have changed here. The aesthetic has shifted somewhat, diving deeper into the comic and arcade inspirations. The Doom guy has become even more of a badass in almost every single way. The first game had a tendency to feel a bit one note. Levels in themselves in Doom Eternal, just like the first game, do feel very samey, but level to level Doom Eternal has the better variety. A more dynamic color palette might be the biggest change here. Doom 2016 kept to Mars and Hell's gritty reds and greys, while Doom Eternal takes players to vibrant, distinct settings like Earth's ruins, alien worlds, and massive temples, each with bold, contrasting colors that bring them to life. Giving the Doom guy a knife is probably the best argument in terms of visuals for me. I think they should have given him something more badass, or maybe just a bigger knife. Aside from that, the shift towards more stylized, almost cartoony visuals enhances the overall aesthetic of the game, which I find to be a noticeable improvement in almost every single aspect. The UI is something the game could do better here. In 2016 we had very simple, readable elements that did their job. In Eternal we have lots of gauges and symbols to keep track of. Some of these are awesome. I especially love the ones placed in the middle of our screen next to our crosshair. We don't have to refocus and snap our eyes to the extremities of our screen anymore, but the times we do have to do that, it feels worse. Ammo and health/armor should have found their way closer to the middle of the screen somehow. Again, this isn't that big of a deal, especially in the first game, but here in Eternal everything is just faster, so this makes a bit more of a difference. The UI is also noticeably more gamey compared to Doom 2016's futuristic helmet heads-up display. I prefer the style of 16's, but I enjoy the added information we see in Eternal. It's a trade-off for sure. Doom Eternal's soundtrack is a big conversation I don't want to have. I'm not informed enough. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to have to ask you to do some googling. Big drama here. The sound design remains stellar either way, with Mick Gordon's and David Levy's dynamic scores intensifying every encounter. It sounds great and has my favorite song from the two games in it. The exhilarating and oh so violent "The Only Thing They Fear Is You." Great stuff from Mick again. What Doom Eternal does best of all is its shooting. It's just a better experience in every single way. Except 1. If you enjoyed finding limited ammo in secret areas instead of relying on the chainsaw and other tools to regenerate ammo, this game doesn't cater to you anymore. In Doom Eternal, shooting and getting shot, killing and healing are intricately tied together. We use the Flame Belch to regenerate our shield and Glory Kills to replenish our health. That's a bit simplified, but you get the idea. You're constantly engaging with these systems, and it feels incredible. Each resource, health, armor, ammo, and so on, is directly linked to an offensive action, turning survival into a matter of taking risks and diving back into the fray rather than retreating to find safe spots. It's a brilliantly simple yet genius design that shifts these resources from purely defensive lifelines into offensive tools that keep the momentum alive. This shift is also why the pistol from Doom 2016 has been removed, a change no one cares about. Let's be honest, we never used it anyway, and clearing up that weapon slot is a smart move. Beyond that, all the weapons from the 2016 version make a return, albeit with some tweaks. The most notable upgrade is the Super Shotgun, now equipped with a grappling hook. Yes, a grappling hook. It takes the Super Shotgun, already an icon of devastation, and somehow makes it even better. I've said in some video somewhere that any game with a grappling hook instantly improves, and Doom Eternal's Super Shotgun proves that point spectacularly. I've gushed about this weapon before, so I won't repeat myself too much, but let's be clear, the Super Shotgun is fucking awesome. When it comes to movement, Doom Eternal sets a new standard. The addition of the dash elevates the gameplay even further. I've always been a fan of dashes, they just add so much mobility, whether by extending jumps, acting as a dodge, or just giving a satisfying sense of speed. But one of the most underrated aspects of a dash is how it just keeps you airborne, maintaining your flow mid-fight. In Doom Eternal, the dash is a masterclass in design. A quick burst forward here, another mid-air adjustment there, and suddenly you're gliding across the battlefield, dodging, attacking, and pressing forward without missing a beat. It's fluid, exhilarating, and genuinely one of my favorite implementations of a dash in any game ever. It's yet another way Doom Eternal keeps you fully immersed in its relentless combat dance. Movement in the first game is super important, but here it's maybe the single biggest part of the sort of gameplay puzzle. More precisely, the combat puzzle the game is built upon. The foundation of this combat puzzle is the art of movement, and expanding on that, positioning. In a game where standing still means almost certain death, each dash, jump and grapple serves a very specific purpose, except if you're totally panicking and spamming the dash and jump button. But the movement in Eternal isn't just a defensive tool, it's a way to sort of manage the battlefield, dodging enemy fire while circling around for better positions to kill a more strategically important foe. The combat arenas are designed to almost force these choices, with platforms, walls and escape routes scattered to reward the player that is willing to use this movement. Some enemies, like the Marauder, require precise timing and spacing, while others, like the Arachnotron, demand targeting of specific weak points. This game forces you to prioritize your targets in real time, balancing immediate threats with long-term positioning, keeping you on your toes and constantly aware of every element in the arena. Another big part of this puzzle is the weapon we use. Switching weapons mid-battle isn't just encouraged, it's essential, as some enemies demand a different approach. The game satisfyingly rewards you if you can switch between your weaponry quickly, so bind them individually please. There are counters and weak points. Simply put, counterplay. Doom Eternal's combat is, again in this way, a puzzle. Super well-made systems working together to keep us both challenged. The game is pretty hard on the harder difficulties, so we have to adapt. But it's more than just reflexes. It's about understanding how each piece of the puzzle, movement, resources, weapon choice, enemy type, arena layout, and so on, fits into the larger rhythm of the fight. The combat puzzle at the heart of Doom Eternal isn't a simple checklist of tasks, it's an intuitive process where every moment demands a response, blending aggression with survival. Survival is an especially potent word here, because in the later stages of the higher difficulties, we're completely fucked if we don't prioritize survival over all else. There are lots of systems at play here, and I can't go into depth about all of them. I'm not that good, so I won't. Instead, let's take a quick look at some of the enemies here. Monsters in the original Doom looked great. Kind of grounded, kind of not. They struck a balance between sort of terrifying and surreal. In Doom Eternal, however, the developers said, to hell with that, and fully embraced a super cartoony, over-the-top style. Is that a good thing? That comes down to personal taste, but to me, it fits the game almost perfectly. The exaggerated designs enhance the tone of the game and undoubtedly complements its faster-paced, chaotic gameplay by making enemies more distinct. The cartoony look helps the monsters stand out against the hyper-realistic, apocalyptic environments we battle through, making it easier to keep track of them in the chaos. Eternal puts a stronger emphasis on identifying and dealing with threats in the correct order, which is something the first game didn't focus as much on. Take the infamous Marauder for example, the game journalist's worst nightmare. Unlike most other enemies, you simply cannot ignore these guys. They demand supreme attention, almost becoming the mini-bosses of the game every time they show up. And when they do show up, there are two main options to take them out. Either you create some distance by running far enough away that it takes them time to catch up, which inevitably causes them to send out their fast, annoying spectral dogs, thin out the horde and take them out when the chaos is less chaotic. Or you engage them directly. The latter option forces you to play their game, carefully countering and punishing their attacks, all while not losing sight of the actual game, dealing with the hordes of enemies around you. This balancing act is what makes them so divisive, I think. Some players despise the Marauder because it's one of the few enemies that almost forces you to adapt into a specific playstyle, unlike most other enemies where you can rely on improvisation or simply brute force. The Marauder demands precision and strategy. You can't just spray and pray here, so you need to outthink and outmaneuver them. It's not that deep, they have very specific openings, but again, doing this while getting stoned from all other angles by the peasants taking their shots is harder than it looks. I like them quite a lot, but with that said, there are situations where they just don't work as well. In one area in the second game, you're thrown into a room and forced to fight 2 Marauders at once. This encounter is harder than most boss fights in the game, which feels kind of excessive. They spawn like regular enemies, yet they demand so much focus that dealing with 2 simultaneously is overwhelming to the point of frustration. In my opinion, this goes a bit too far. It's not fun anymore. Something that for me takes Doom Eternal over the edge completely compared to 2016 is the DLCs, The Ancient Gods Part 1 and Part 2. Visually, The Ancient Gods is stunning, adding variety and detail that maintain the high standards already set by Doom Eternal, that in themselves eclipse 2016. The Ancient Gods Part 1 leans into a darker environment, perfectly suited to the expansion's heavier tone. By contrast, Part 2 features a range of mythical, almost fantasy-like locales, imbuing the game's final act with an epic, almost larger-than-life quality. Some, including me sometimes, think it goes a bit too far here actually, especially when it comes to the story. I think it's just crazy and way too much of a focus. I mean, come on, there's an evil clone of Doom guy. That's crazy. The gameplay in these 2 DLCs varies. The first one is infamous for its extreme difficulty. There are some seriously crazy encounters here, and none of them are boss fights. Some of the highlights include the Halt, the last level of the first DLC. Just amazing all the way throughout. It doesn't add all that much, but what's here is just super solid and fun. The blood swamps are also super cool, a swamp that gives me serious Halloween vibes. It has a couple of cool gimmicks and some pretty hard arenas. Great stuff. The second DLC is more of an expansion here. We get another weapon, a hammer that acts as a bit of a get out of jail free card, to make the new and harder combat a bit less impossible. I love the level called the World Spear, a greener level that adds targets for us to swing on using the meat hook on the super shotgun, adding another element to the movement. What the second DLC gets wrong here is its last boss fight. It sucks ass. It's more frustrating than anything. Missing an opening or being slightly off will basically reset the fight for the boss, but keep you where you're at. I died a lot of times here and it wasn't very fun. But despite that, I think the second DLC is more fun. It expands the combat in ways I loved and has plenty of fun arenas and fights. Lovely DLC. So, these DLCs are excellent, to the point where I think the best part of the entire game is in the DLCs. But they're also very challenging. I'd recommend them to anyone who really liked Eternal. It's just more of that game, but a bit better and a bit more intense. The weakest aspect of Doom Eternal is undoubtedly its narrative. While it's not inherently terrible, the issue lies in how seriously the game takes its story in contrast to its overall tone. The chaotic arenas, arcade-like demons, and the protagonist wielding an absurd array of over-the-top weapons and abilities feel mismatched with the weighty plot the game tries to deliver. This dissonance isn't much of an issue for players like myself who aren't particularly invested in the story. However, for those who prioritize narrative coherence, the juxtaposition of such a serious storyline with the game's exaggerated elements might be jarring or even frustrating at times. I'll avoid delving into specifics, but this mismatch could prove problematic for anyone expecting a more harmonious blend between gameplay and storytelling. But Eternal isn't the worst game because of this. It's more aligned with the originals than the 2016 version is. So, if your point is that Doom Eternal went too far, you're actually mistaken. 2016 didn't go far enough. The original 1993 version is super over the top. The tonal shift in Doom Eternal is very much intentional. embracing the absurdity of the franchise's lore and turning it into a strength. But there's more. I won't claim that Doom Eternal surpasses its predecessor in every aspect. That's simply not the case. In fact, one of the most significant areas where Doom 2016 excels, and this is difficult to admit after putting together this entire analysis, is its overall level design. Doom 2016 offers a more well-rounded experience here, especially between arenas. While Doom Eternal has its strengths, particularly in its DLCs, the core game tends to fall short in comparison here. Arena to arena, Doom 2016 provides more breathing room, both in terms of physical space and strategic sightlines, ultimately allowing for greater freedom and, even if it's a bit simpler, movement. This isn't to say that the movement mechanics are superior, but rather that the level design offers a more balanced experience in contrast to Doom Eternal's often more restrictive environments. Don't get me wrong though, Doom Eternal's level design is almost always excellent, at least compared to basically every other mainstream FPS game out there. The levels in 2016 are, in the earlier parts of the game, often more open, more like the 1993 original, complete with backtracking, but the later ones are more like Eternals, more linear with a focus on big set-piece fights that take longer. I'm also not against the platforming in the two games, but more specifically in Eternal, something that comes up more than anything else as a talking point in the debate over the better Doom title. I think it's kind of stupid. The platforming is in both of the games, and in Eternal it's a 1-minute break from the combat that is better than in the 2016 version. Does this minute of average first-person platforming destroy the game's overall better gameplay? Again, it's stupid. The added complexity in Doom Eternal isn't a flaw, it's an evolution. The game builds on Doom 2016's amazing foundation, the foundation that so many people value so much that they prefer it over the building standing on top of it. Eternal has more depth for the players who crave mastery and replayability. And no, it's not quote-unquote too much. It introduces more mechanics, sure, but Eternal teaches us them gradually, making sure we have time to adapt. The challenge people call too much creates a rewarding sense of growth, making Eternal less about simplicity and more about skill expression. Is it like Doom from the 90s? Not even close. Is it better, basically objectively? Obviously. Does that matter? Not really. I think what makes the new wave of Doom games and the subsequent revival of the genre, now called boomer shooters, ultimately so special is their departure from other first-person shooters released at the time. That's also partially why I think Doom 2016 is somehow appreciated more than its bigger and better sequel by lots of people. It's still slightly grounded, gritty, and not very arcadey. These people are simply not ready to fully let go of their Call of Duty campaign gameplay quite yet, not ready to give up on the bleak visuals and story, the slower pacing, and the frankly simpler gameplay. That's fine. You're not willing to engage with the game on a level higher than I like to shoot stuff with the weapon I like at my own pace. To you, I say, go have fun in Doom 2016. It might be the entry drug that finally pushes you to engage with some of the other features that the sequel adds. If it doesn't, that's fine too. You've come a long way already. Doom is very far away from Call of Duty. It's only a game after all, so go make your own fun. This makes me sound like a bit of an elitist, but Doom 2016 might actually be better for the average gamer. It has the more approachable game design and the better level design, while Eternal has the deeper gameplay. If you want to play Doom Eternal and don't want to engage with the game on the intended level, lower the difficulty. That way you can play it how you could play the first game. Slower and more grounded, less focused on switching weapons and so on. The weakest aspect of Doom 2016 is its pacing. For me, the game is a solid 6 to 7 out of 10 until we get most of the guns and equipment. It almost teeters on the tightrope of being generic, but then our arsenal is expanded enough and we get to play the game in a more exciting way. The rest of it, aside from not being as good as Eternal, is just really well made from the ground up. Polished as all hell. Doom 2016 may not have had the seismic impact of its predecessor, but that's to be expected. Few reboots ever do, It's hard for any game to rival the sheer influence of Doom 1993 or Doom 2 that followed, which practically invented the FPS genre as we know it. The same could be said for, let's say, Baldur's Gate 3, which, despite its success, doesn't outdo the groundbreaking legacy of its origins. It gets close, that's for sure, everyone played the game, but it's still not as influential. But like Baldur's Gate 3, Doom 2016 marked a renewal of a classic genre. It reignited enthusiasm for fast, skill-based boomer shooters over cinematic, cutscene-heavy experiences that could be quote-unquote played by watching a cutscene movie here on YouTube. In this way, Doom 2016 is a lot like Half-Life 2, not as revolutionary as the original, but still a key that brought new energy to a timeless style of gameplay left behind. So where does that leave Doom Eternal? Is it a grand leap forward, like the fictional Half-Life 3 or Baldur's Gate 4? Or does it function more as a continuation, like Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and 2, or a fictional standalone Baldur's Gate 3 DLC, essentially building on its predecessor? I lean towards the latter. Doom Eternal adds a lot. New mechanics, refined visuals, a heightened emphasis on movement and tactics, but don't quite redefine the genre as Doom 2016 did, launching a new genre into the stratosphere. Not as big as Doom 1993, but still important. It's a polished expansion on its predecessor's revival, thrilling in its own right, but stopping short of the kind of landmark shift that defines the all-time greats. It's a phenomenal game, nearly perfect in terms of gameplay, but not different enough from 2016 to where we can discard its predecessors. Also, just as a little side note here, a shocking amount of people think they can critique the game before even finishing it. That's like saying a puzzle sucks 2 seconds into trying to solve it without ever seeing a solution. Don't be this guy. Say you couldn't get through it, that you didn't like it, but don't compare it as a whole. The parts before is better than what this part could have been about, is essentially what they're saying.
I didn't even make it 2 hours into Eternal. It was dog water compared to 2016. Whole vibe felt completely off.
This guy didn't even play 2 hours and thought he could comment on the game. To be clear, about 2 hours into the game, we get the super shotgun with a cool as fuck grappling hook. And while we're on Twitter, here's another one.
Well, I did finish Eternal, and in a lot of ways it was a big downgrade.
Now explain one downgrade.
Well, for one, you can't use melee since it does 1 damage. Unless you get the Reddit cringe safe edgy Blood Punch queer upgrade, which then insta-kills.
It should have done 0 damage, I'm with you there. I agree that the Blood Punch is also really fun.
Cringe.
The first thing they could come up with as a downgrade from 2016 to Eternal is the nerf of the Punch, which did barely any damage in 2016, where it acted as a second pistol that did even less damage and got used even less. In Eternal, it's replaced with the Blood Punch that instantly kills stuff and does lots of splash damage as a charge-up ability that some enemies are vulnerable to, taking off armor from this guy for example, which adds more options and complexity in combat. This guy also happened to be a furry who says seats or X eats instead of tweets, so it's probably a bot, but who cares.
Giving the Doomslayer a knife was the biggest mistake. Nothing will feel more violently raw and satisfying than using your bare hands to finish the job.
Some other guy thought the fact that the Doom guy has a big blade on his wrist instead of just using his hands was the biggest downgrade. Which is like, what? In Eternal, we use our hands in most glory kills, and the ones that don't are upgrades to their 2016 counterparts. Also, the previously mentioned Blood Punch is used a lot more than the punch from 2016. If this is the biggest reason you have, you must love Eternal. So, the TLDR to finally close this shit out. Go play Doom 2016, and if you liked it, go play Eternal. If you don't like Eternal, that's fine. I can't force you to like something. I tried, but I'm not Jesus. Shooting in Doom 2016 is impactful, accurate, and seriously refreshing compared to its Call of Duty competition. Shooting in Doom Eternal is art. A dance of switching and combining, a puzzle of parts like resource management and weak points. Moving in Doom 2016 feels wonderful. A grounded but still fast and responsive set of systems that fit the more grounded tone. Moving in Doom Eternal feels phenomenal. A fast-paced but more than manageable movement shooter with a truly great set of systems to express yourself and fluidly move in and out of engagements. The visuals and sound of Doom are great from top to toe. Ultimately, kind of one note and somewhat stale by the end, but extremely good. Eternal is a bit better here with more variety. But what I really just can't get out of my head is this feeling that Doom Eternal and Doom 2016 really are totally different games that mimic the original 90s version in different ways. Most debates are about the visuals or the puzzle combat being too restrictive in Eternal. Both of these have been talked about a lot already, but let me get it out here once again. The combat in the original allowed us to use a couple of weapons all the time. We didn't have to switch, and most demons didn't force strict options. It's also significantly slower, to a point where when I came back to the game for some gameplay, I had to really adapt to have fun here again. This simpler approach is the sandbox approach, but because they don't force you to use specific weapons, you will, because you're human, use the best thing instead. In 2016, I used the same 3 or 4 weapons over and over, sometimes switching to something else when I ran out of ammo. In Eternal, I switched between almost all of them. I didn't use the minigun all that much because it feels a bit slow movement-wise, and the original shotgun got replaced by the super shotgun when I got that. And I prefer this approach actually. The game forces you to play in a bit more restrictive, selective way. But this makes it less selective and less restrictive, because you have to use more of your options. I do think it should give you more than one option sometimes though. Some enemies have a very specific weakness that you have to use. The ghost enemy is maybe the biggest culprit here, and that's not the best. I say allow us to use the weak points or just force our way through by wasting ammo. So we're the ones who feel stupid instead of blaming the devs for making us use the entire loadout. It's a very hard debate because again, the games are super alike. They look basically the same and play very similarly, but they're also very different. In the end though, I think that if you engage with the systems here, the debate boils down to really good versus truly great. And to be frank, that's a pretty weird debate to me. That's the Doom Dual Retrospective Review Comparison Extravaganza done and dusted. Took us a while, but here we are. Now all convinced that I'm right and that you, Doom 2016 propagandist, is wrong. This is where I'd place the games in my list of greats I've made a big video on. Minecraft is still up top, followed by Dark Souls. It's going to stay that way for a while, or not, depending on what game I pick next. I'm bumping down The Last of Us a peg to put Doom Eternal in 3rd place. For now. I could probably put them both in the same tier. I love them both about equally, but for different reasons, so they're hard to rank. Followed by Black Ops 2, and then we have Doom 2016 right above Grand Theft Auto 4. Last we have Apex, a game that will stay down there until I make a video about a mediocre game. Probably my favorite long-form video on my channel, right next to the Dark Souls one, but a game that has taken a bit of a downward turn in the last few months. That's it for the list for now. I'm looking forward to 20 years into the future when there's like 2 more games on there. Thanks for watching. Like usual, I want to say that I'm sorry that this video took me so long. It shouldn't have. It's less of a long analytical review and more of a double review, where both reviews really try to not overlap while being about 2 really similar games. It's harder to make this kind of video than I thought it was, and future multi-game analysis videos will play out differently. I'm also sorry that this video isn't as big as I first imagined it. It's a shorter long-form review than I had anticipated, and I'm sorry if you expected more from me. So, about the channel. I'm not stopping. Again. I say this a lot, but I love making these, and I wouldn't keep making them if I didn't. If you're a Patreon subscriber, thanks for believing me. It means a fuck ton.